Hi, welcome to Far From Eden. Happy Sunday. As I promised yesterday, we're going to do a Grimm Brothers fairy tale today. And I did do the thing where I Googled, like, what's the most based, what's the most horrifying type of thing. And the internet answered with the Juniper Tree, which I found in my book is the Almond Tree. And I got a little bit of kind of what it's about, not too much because I don't want to know yet. And I think I've already forgotten because I was looking up a couple. Literally, I've already forgotten. It's Sunday. My brain is tired. Had that great interview yesterday that I'm excited to bring to you guys in the next few days. I have to look at it, see, like release it in full form. It was like almost 3 hours, and then I'll make some clips of it. But if you're new here, sometimes we read old poetry, we read Grimm Brothers fairy tales, we will do Hans Christian Andersen, and I am going to look into Rudyard Kipling's book of tales. I did not know that existed, so I'm very interested in that. What we look for is, well, we're on the search for what is true, what is good, and what is beautiful. And kind of helps guide what's going on in society today with men and women, and how did we get here? Is there a road back? And I found that so many of us, including myself, as I've learned more about this, we all, like, very few of us realize how far away we are from the way it's, quote, supposed to be, right? I'm even to the point where I'm like, I don't even think the Industrial Revolution was a good idea, which sounds radical in this world. But the more I learn about, well, when was it going well? You got to go back. And I'm not saying that everything was good. Sure, infant mortality was high, and well, they tell us, we don't know what's real. We don't know how it really was back then. I don't know. But yeah. So we look back and we go, well, what did they know back then? And what we have found thus far is that, well, back then, pre-industrial revolution, I guess, if you will, and some after, obviously, too, we knew what men were and what women were and what we were supposed to do. And female nature was not a mystery. There was a reason women were in the home. There was a reason we were protected from ourselves, and we were in a place where we actually do find fulfillment and wholeness, and we don't have like crazy anxiety and depression. And modern people today, especially women, will say, oh, I would be bored, I would be this, but they're not understanding that you wouldn't know all the other things. Remember the Garden of Eden? Wasn't the forbidden tree the knowledge of good and evil? It's a little bit like that little thing that we all have in our pockets, that most of it has a fruit on it, an apple, you might say, with a bite taken out of it. And it's almost like that is a parallel to the forbidden fruit, because when you have that phone and you have Instagram and you can see all these influencers and stuff, you see certain lifestyles, you see private jets, you see champagne, you see yachts, you see all that stuff. There was a time when people, women, didn't know. There was a time not that long ago, when you think of it as far as historical context, that a lot of people didn't know what a mansion was. They didn't know what those things were to be jealous of it. There's a reason God told us not to covet. It's very difficult to find fulfillment and happiness and peace and all the rest of it if you're constantly looking at, well, what are they doing? What do they have? And what is Facebook, Instagram, social media, if not that? And so, yeah, when women say, well, I love my career and I would be, so bored and I wouldn't be fulfilled. And blah, blah, it's like, I get it. Yeah, you probably wouldn't be, because all of this worldliness, so to speak, isn't helpful to us. And I think it seems, at least just observationally, it seems to have had a more detrimental effect on the women folk. And they've begun to chase happiness in all these directions, filing for divorce and, chasing a career and all the rest of it. And yet the amount of people on SSRIs, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety and drinking, a bottle of wine a night, why is that so high? And it could be other reasons, sure. But in my opinion, and in what I see, it seems to exactly correlate with all these rights and freedoms that we fought for. And I have air quotes because they're not rights. They're not freedoms. They're privileges that we didn't fight for or work for. They were bestowed upon us because it was useful to the people who did the bestowing. Anyway, it's Sunday. Let's have a fairy tale. I actually found this. The website that came up was like, to read, it was a good story to read on Halloween. This was the one that this website said was the best one to read on Halloween. So apparently it's absolutely horrifying. We'll see. I'm so curious. I'm so excited. There was another one on there and I can't find it in my book. So I'm thinking it has another name. It was something like, my brain is so done. Oh my gosh. The MS Beach, I can't even talk. The multiple sclerosis beast monster is eating words and phrases and thoughts as I'm having them. So that's fun. That cute little noise was little Lola. She has her little adorable sneezes. Lola's my little dog, if you're new here. Yes, I'm a stereotype. She's actually the most unlikely farm dog you would ever have. She just wound up that way, so she doesn't know she's a little dog. That's my little qualifier. Like, I didn't get a little dog on purpose. I just needed to save her. Anyway, whenever she distracts me, which is pretty much every single video, because obviously she's supposed to be the center of attention at all times, that's when I'm reminded to ask you to please like the video. Gosh, you could tell I'm tired. It took like 5 minutes for me to ask you to like the video. I had to tell a story all about Lola. Well, at least I'm in the mood for storytelling, right? At least I'm in the mood for storytelling, which, by the way, I just want to say last night's premiere that I released these as premiere so we can have the open chat. And I'm getting to the point now I realize where I'm like, it's sort of like a regular crew in there, right? We have Glenn crossing every time. We have like a lot of the people are sort of regulars, right? Garrett, there's 2 Garretts, so I'm confused, but there's Garrett who knows about Lola and then Garrett who had to then learn about Lola. And I don't know which one's which, but anyways. And then last night, I'm like, where's Nicholas and where's Rojas? Because they're always in here. And now I'm worried about you guys. So please, sign of life, proof of life. Maybe you're doing a Memorial Day. Oh yes, happy Memorial Day. Sorry, I don't have the social life. I forget what special days it is. Anyway, yes. So Nicholas, Rojas, I missed you in the chat last night, and now I'm worried. It's going to be a maternal thing. I'm going to be like, you guys okay? Of course you probably are, but okay. All right. I'll stop. The Almond Tree. Long, long ago, perhaps 2,000 years, there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife, and they were very fond of one another, but had no children. Still, they wished for some very much, and the wife prayed for them day and night. Still, they had none. Right away, she's pious. How many of these tales have we read where the woman is described as pious, including Cinderella? So, I think it's important. It was important, and they said it was important. It's not in Disney fairy tales, anything about being good and pious. Before their house was a yard. In it stood an almond tree, under which the woman stood once in the winter peeling an apple. And as she peeled the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood dropped onto the snow. "Ah," said the woman with a deep sigh, and she looked at the blood before her and was very sad. "Had I but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And as she said that, her heart grew light, and it seemed to her as if something would come of her wish. Then she went into the house, and a month passed. The snow disappeared. In two months, then all was green, and 3 months, then came the flowers out of the ground, and 4 months, then all the trees in the wood squeezed up against one another, and the green boughs all grew twisted together, and the little birds sang, so that the whole wood resounded, and the blossoms fell from the trees. When the 5th month had gone, and she stood under the almond tree, it smelt so sweet that her heart leaped for joy, and she could not help falling down on her knees. And when the 6th month had passed, the fruits were large, and she felt very happy. At the end of the 7th month, she snatched the almonds and ate them so greedily that she was dreadfully ill. Then the 8th month passed away, and she called her husband and cried and said, "If I die, bury me under the almond tree." What is going on? Then she was quite easy and was glad till the next month was gone. Then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And when she saw it, she was so delighted that she died. Okay. I have to read that again. Grimm Brothers that's just how they roll. Okay. If I die, bury me under the almond tree. Then she was quite easy and was glad till the next month was gone. Then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And when she saw it, she was so delighted that she died. Oh my goodness. Then her husband buried her under the almond tree and began to grieve most violently. A little time, and he was easier. And when he had sorrowed a little longer, he left off, and a little time longer, and he took another wife. Uh-oh. Sometimes stepmoms are bad news in fairy tales, which is interesting. I haven't quite figured that one out. My brain is still chewing on that one. Like, what was the deal with the stepmoms? And the second, like if he's a widower and then he remarries, it's like it didn't always go so well. Anyway, with the second wife, he had a daughter. What happened to the child? Other child. Anyways, you're like, I don't know. You're reading it. With the second wife, he had a daughter, but the child by the first wife was a little son, and was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her so much. But then she looked at the little boy, and it seemed to go right through her heart. and it seemed as if he always stood in her way. And then she was always thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter, and it was the evil one who suggested it to her, so that she couldn't bear the sight of the little boy, and poked him about from one corner to another, and buffeted him here and cuffed him there, so that the poor child was always in fear, and when he came from school, he had no peace. What an interesting way to describe it. He had no peace. That is what you guys are always saying. It's the simplest thing. It's the only thing you want. You just want peace. This little boy could not find peace. Ugh, this horrible woman. Goodness gracious. The little daughter came up and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a beautiful apple out of the box. The box had a green, heavy lid with a great, sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter, "shall not brother have one too?" That annoyed the woman, but she said, "Yes, when he comes from school." And as she saw out of the window that he was coming, it was just as if the evil one, and they have evil one capitalized, so we know who they're talking about. They're talking about Satan. It was just as if the evil one came over to her, and she snatched the apple away from her daughter again and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." She threw the apple into the box and shut it. Then the little boy came in at the door, and the evil one made her say in a friendly manner, "My son, will you have an apple?" And she looked at him wickedly. "Mother," said the little boy, "how horribly you look." "Yes, give me an apple." I wasn't expecting that. Then she thought she must pacify him. "Come with me," she said, and opened the lid. "Reach out an apple." And as the little boy bent into the box, the evil one whispered to her, "Bang!" She slammed the lid to, so that his head flew off and fell amongst the red apples. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, so she just chopped his head off. Then in the fright, she thought, "Could I get that off my mind? Oh, you poor lady." Then she went up into her room to the chest of drawers and got out a white cloth from the top drawer, and she set the head on the throat again and tied the handkerchief round so that nothing could be seen, and placed him outside the door on a chair and gave him the apple in his hand. After a while, so she put his head back on his body. She went up to her room just first, got out a white cloth. She's tying his head back on, so nothing could be seen. "Oh, it's fine. I put his head back on. No problem. Oh, it's fine." And placed him outside the door on a chair and gave him the apple in his hand. After a while, little Marlene came in the kitchen to her mother, who stood by the fire and had a kettle with hot water before her, which she kept stirring round. "Mother," said little Marlene, "brother is sitting outside the door and looks quite white, and has got an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he didn't answer me. Then I was quite frightened." "Go again," said the mother, "and if he will not answer you, give him a box on the ear." Then Marlene went to her brother and said, "Give me the apple," but he was silent. Then she gave him a box on the ear, and the head tumbled off, at which she was frightened and began to cry and sob. Then she ran to her mother and said, "Oh, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off." And she cried and would not be pacified. "Marlene," said the mother, "what have you done?" But be quiet so that nobody may notice it. It can't be helped now. We'll bury him under the almond tree. Well, it's often said the only people that women really love are their children, and there are lots of examples where that's just not true when it comes to choosing between themselves or the children. They might put the children above the man, but just pay attention to how often modern women put their children above themselves. And in this situation, she preferred the daughter, didn't she? But when it came to how much she hated the son, she said she wanted, the fortune for her daughter and not to go to the son. But look how she's treating the daughter. So is it that she wants the fortune to go to the daughter, or is it that with the son out of the way, it can actually go to her? It's almost like she's using her child to manipulate a situation to acquire resources. This was long before family court, no-fault divorce, rampant divorce in general. And look at what they're telling us. Just amazing. Amazing. Right? But it's every time. Every time. All right. Lost my spot because I start thinking, can't do two things at once. All right. So she boxed him in the ear, right? And his head fell off. My goodness. Oh, yeah. They're planning to. Can't. Okay. Then the mother took the little boy and put him into a box and put it under the almond tree. But little Marlene stood by and cried, and the tears all fell into the box. Soon the father came home and sat down to the table and said, "Where is my son?" Then the mother brought in a great big dish of stew. I'm really nervous. Then the mother brought in a great big dish of stew, and little Marlene cried and could not leave off. Then said the father again, "Where is my son?" "Oh," said the mother, "he had gone across the country to Mutton." Muten, it's German, Mutten. "He is going to stop there a bit." "What is he doing there? And why did he not say goodbye to me?" "Oh, he wanted to go and asked me if he might stop there 6 weeks." "How old is he?" "And he will be taken care of there." "Ah," said the man, "I feel very sorry. That was not right. He ought to have wished me goodbye." With that, he began to eat and said to Marlene, "What are you crying for? Your brother will soon come back." "Oh, wife," said he, "then how delicious this tastes. Give me some more." And he ate till all the broth was done. Little Marlene went to her box and took from the bottom drawer her best silk handkerchief and carried it outside the door and cried bitter tears. Then she laid herself under the almond tree on the green grass, and when she had laid herself there, all at once she felt quite light and happy and cried no more. Then the almond tree began to move, and the boughs spread out quite wide, and then went back again, just as when one is very much pleased and claps with her hands. At the same time, a sort of mist rose from the tree. In the middle of the mist, it burned like fire, and out of the fire there flew a beautiful bird that sang very sweetly and flew up in the air, and when it had flown away, the almond tree was as it had been before. The little Marlene was as light and happy as if her brother were still alive, and went into the house to dinner. The bird flew away and perched upon a goldsmith's house and began to sing. Okay, the bird flew away perched upon a goldsmith's house and began to sing. My mother killed me, my father grieved for me, my sister little Marlene wept under the almond tree. Kwit, kwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Whoa! The goldsmith sat in his workshop and was making a gold chain when he heard the bird that sat upon his roof and sang, and it seemed to him so beautiful. Then he got up, and as he stepped over the sill of the door, he lost one of his slippers, but he went straight up the middle of the street with one slipper and one sock on. He had his leather apron on, and in one hand he had the gold chain, and in the other the pincers, and the sun shone brightly up the street. He went and stood and looked at the bird. Bird, said he then, how beautifully you can sing. Sing me that song again. Nay, said the bird, I don't sing twice for nothing. Give me the gold chain, and I will sing it you again. There, said the goldsmith, take the gold chain. Now, sing me that again. The bird came and took the gold chain in the right claw and sat before the goldsmith and sang, my mother killed me, my father grieved for me, my sister little Marlene wept under the almond tree. Kwit, kwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then the bird flew off to a shoemaker and perched upon the roof of his house and sang, my mother killed me, my father grieved for me, my sister little Marlene wept under the almond tree. Kwit, kwit, what a beautiful bird am I. This is so good. The shoemaker heard it and ran outside the door in his shirt sleeves and looked up at the roof and was obliged to hold his hand before his eyes to prevent the sun from blinding him. Bird, said he, how beautifully you can sing. Then he called in at the door, wife, come out here. Here's a bird. Look at the bird. He just can sing beautifully. Then he called his daughter and children and apprentices, servant boy and maid. And they all came up the street and looked at the bird. Oh, how beautiful he was. And he had such red and green feathers, and round about the throat was all like gold, and the eyes sparkled in his head like stars. Bird, said the shoemaker, now sing me that piece again. Nay, said the bird, I don't sing twice for nothing. You must make me a present of something. Wife, said the man, go into the shop. On the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Fetch them down. The wife went and fetched the shoes. There, bird, said the man, now sing me that song again. Then the bird came and took the shoes in the left claw and flew up onto the roof again and sang, my mother killed me, my father grieved for me, my sister, little Marlene, wept under the almond tree. Kwit, kwit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had done singing, he flew away, the chain he had in the right claw and the shoes the left claw, and he flew far away to a mill. And the mill went clip, clap, clip, clap, and in the mill there sat 20 miller's men. They were shaping a stone and chipped away, hick, hack, hick, hack, hick, hack, and the mill went clip, clap, clip, clap, clip, clap. Then the bird flew and sat on a lime tree and stood before the mill and sang, my mother killed me, then one left off. My father grieved for me, then two more left off, and heard it. My sister, then again 4 left off. Little Marlene, now there were only 8 chipping away. Wept under, now only 5, the almond tree, now only 1. Kwit, kwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then the last left off when he heard the last word, "Bird," said he, "how beautifully you sing. Let me too hear that. Sing me that again." "Nay," said the bird, "I don't sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, and I will sing it again." "Aye," said he, "if it belonged to me alone, you should have it." "Yes," said the others, "if he sings again, he shall have it." Then the bird came down, and all the 20 millers caught hold of a pole and raised the stone up, ha, up, ha, up. Sound effects. And the bird stuck his head through the hole and took it round his neck like a collar, and flew back to the tree and sang, "My mother killed me, my father grieved for me, my sister little Marlene wept under the almond tree. Coo-it, coo-it, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and had in his right claw the gold chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone, and he flew away to his father's house. In the room sat the father, the mother, and little Marlene at dinner. And the father said, "Oh dear, how light and happy I feel." "Nay," said the mother, "I am all of a tremble, just as if there were going to be a heavy thunderstorm." "Well, I think she's feeling some guilt, as the bird is close." Interesting. But little Marlene sat and cried, and the bird came flying. And as he perched on the roof, the father said, "I feel so cheerful, and the sun shines so deliciously outside. It's exactly as if I were going to see some old acquaintance again." "Nay," said the wife, "I am so frightened. My teeth chatter, and it's like fire in my veins." And she tore open her stays. But little Marlene sat in a corner and cried, and held her plate before her eyes and cried it quite wet. Then the bird perched on the almond tree and sang, "My mother killed me." Then the mother held her ears and shut her eyes, and would neither see nor hear, but it rumbled in her ears like the most terrible storm, and her eyes burned and twittered like lightning. "My father grieved for me." "Oh, mother," said the man, "there is a beautiful bird." Wait, where are we? "Oh, mother," said the man, it's the father. "There is a beautiful bird that sings so splendidly. The sun shines so warm, and everything smells all like cinnamon. My sister, little Marlene." Then Marlene laid her head on her knees and cried away. But the man said, "I shall go out. I must see the bird close." "Oh, do not go," said the woman. "It seems as if the whole house shook and were on fire." But the man went out and looked at the bird. "Wept under the almond tree. Coo-it, coo-it, what a beautiful bird am I." And the bird let the gold chain fall, and it fell just around the man's neck and fitted beautifully. Then he went in and said, "See, oh." Then he went in and said, "See what an excellent bird it is. It has given me such a beautiful gold chain, and it looks so splendid." But the woman was so frightened that she fell her whole length on the floor, and her cap tumbled off her head. Then the bird sang, "My mother killed me. Oh, that I were 1,000 fathoms under the earth not to hear that." "My father grieved for me." Then the woman fainted. "My sister, little Marlene." "Ah," said Marlene, "I will go out too and see if the bird will give me something." And she went out. Then the bird threw the shoes down, wept under the almond tree. "Coo-it, coo-it, what a beautiful bird am I." Then she was so happy and lively, and put the new red shoes on, and danced and jumped back again. "Oh," said she, "I was so dull when I went out, and now I am so happy. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes." "Well," said the woman, and jumped up, and her hair stood on end like flames of fire. "I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I will go out too and see if it will make me easier." I don't think it would. And as she stepped outside the door, bang, the bird threw the millstone on her head so that she was completely overwhelmed. The father and little Marlene heard it and went out. Then a smoke and flames and fire rose from the place, and when that had passed, there stood the little brother. And he took his father and little Marlene by the hand, and all three embraced one another heartily and went into the house to dinner. Okay. 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 I'm reading the last paragraph again because Grimm brothers do that. They wrap it up real quick. And you're just like, what now? And I think it's so interesting because our minds are accustomed to certain kinds of stories. There's absolutely like an equation or like a formula. There you go. That's the word to make a story, a book, a movie. We all learned it in school. It's like the introduction, you got the climax, you got the resolution. Like we all expect a certain, way. I personally think that the puppeteers, the people in charge, did that for a reason to have us think a certain way. For example, I think, when you watch like Dateline, 48 Hours, any of those things where it's like, on a dark night, she was walking alone, like that kind of a thing. And it's always a story about, somebody being abducted and then a woman being abducted and something terrible happening to her. And there's just a certain rhythm to it. And there's a certain way it ends. The story ends, And I think it's so that we think like that. So that when they tell us baloney in the news, if it follows that same pattern of a narrative, our brains accept it more. That's my theory. I say that to say that when we read Grimm Brothers fairy tales, especially towards the end, you just kind of go, what? Because it's different than sort of how our brains are trained to hear a story. I'm saying this completely off the cuff, but I think you guys know what I mean. So I'm gonna read the last paragraph again because my brain it's not trained to accept information this way. I guess, we're not used to these kinds of consequences happening in stories either. It doesn't really happen like that in our stories and stuff like that. If you think about, for example, Cinderella is a great example because we pretty much all know the story. The stepsisters and the stepmother. Well, in Cinderella, nothing really in the Disney version of it, like nothing really happens bad to the stepsisters and the evil stepmother. Nothing really happens to them. That's not the same thing in the Grimm Brothers version. And that's the whole point. It's a big part of it. Cinderella was pious. The stepsisters were actually beautiful, but they were bad. They were lacking in character. And that was the whole point. So anyways, we covered that one. And I do have a playlist. I think I still need to put the last one we did on the playlist. I think I forgot. But there's a playlist of all the Grimm Brothers fairy tales that we've done so far. So without further ado, I will read the last paragraph again. "Well," said the woman, and jumped up, and her hair stood on end like flames of fire. "I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I will go out too and see if it will make me easier." I think she's experiencing extreme guilt and maybe fear of consequences, because back then she at least would have known that she did something very, very wrong, and that, her husband's not going to be too happy if he ever finds out. And she does know that the sister knows. What if the sister says something? Sister can't stop crying. So she wants to go outside to see if she can feel better. Again, we're just trying to escape accountability. And there's no, maybe I should say something. Maybe I should confess. Maybe I'm horrible. I should never have done that. There's no regret. She just doesn't want to feel like this. She just wants to do the bad thing and not have the consequences. And as she stepped outside the door, bang, the bird threw the millstone onto her head, so that she was completely overwhelmed. I think they're not saying like that was the end of her. I think we're just supposed to know that. The father and little Marlene heard it and went out. Then a smoke and flames and fire rose from the place. And when that had passed, there stood the little brother, and he took his father and little Marlene by the hand, and all three of them embraced. All three embraced one another heartily and went into the house to dinner. Yeah. Consequences. They all went in for dinner, and not a one of them was like, well, what happened to that lady? It was just like, all right. Nobody said, like, there were consequences, but Marlene didn't seek out revenge. The boy, I mean, he saw revenge. But they didn't talk about it. Maybe they did. Maybe that was the conversation at dinner. Grimm Brothers is just like, they don't have to say it because people knew. People knew. And once again, we've got this theme of the next parent comes in and all's fine and dandy until she has her child. And then it's about that child, not the father's children with the original wife. People used to know. This particular book is from this particular edition is from the 1930s, but Grimm Brothers goes back to the 1800s, and they traveled through Europe collecting all the folklore and stories that people had gathered and were telling each other. And I think there probably was an aspect of, there's some kind of entertainment to it, right? But more importantly, it's like, let's remember what is true. I think that's really what it's about. Let's remember what is true, and let's teach the children what is true. They did not have a problem letting kids know life can be difficult. I mean, they didn't have to. Kids just knew. I mean, life was hard in a way, but it was hard in a way that built character and closeness, and families knew that they needed one another. It wasn't even a question. Being dependent on someone wasn't considered a bad thing. People knew that they needed other people. And women especially have lost that with their whole following this idea that we're having, rights and freedoms and all the rest of it that we didn't have before. What they've done is just separate us from, the role that we did for so long, and convince women that motherhood is oppression, and that they could be so much more. And this story starts with, this was a couple and they were very happy, but they didn't have a child. That used to be a tragedy for a woman if she wasn't able to have children. It used to be a tragedy. She used to really be bothered by it. It's a theme in a lot of, older, especially in the Bible too, But anyway, yeah, I love these stories so much. I love reviving the old things that for some reason they just have to change. Like Disney changing the stories or updating. Believe me, the ones that are newer editions are changed. Why? It's not like they're protecting us from, horror and gore and stuff. There's horror movies. They don't care about that. Do they not want us to know what people used to know? It's not what people used to think. That's the thing. Like, oh, people used to think there's no, they used to understand reality. They used to know. They used to know the laws of nature. They used to understand that there's a creator. It was just kind of obvious. Something didn't come from nothing. Wonderful. I love you guys. I hope you're having a great Sunday. I hope you're having a good Memorial Day weekend. It sure is a little different once you understand things and are a little more, like my friend that I had the interview with yesterday, when you understand the Matrix and you think, well, Memorial Day. Yes, I will remember all of the men who fought and died, sacrificed themselves for what? I'm not sure, because I know what, the history books say that all these wars were fought for, especially once the 20th century came. Once, building weapons was big business. 20th century, post-industrial revolution. I'm telling you, I should have been Amish. But yeah, that's when I just think, well, really? Archduke Ferdinand, World War I, Russia got involved. They were already absolutely depleted from previous wars. They didn't have a dog in the fight. And they somehow got roped into World War I, and they lost a tremendous amount of people. They lost so many men. I want to say 400,000, but I'm afraid that I'm not remembering it exactly. I looked into this, after studying history in high school and college. I used to choose history as an elective in college because I loved it so much. And now I'm like, well, I don't even know if what they were telling us was real. I know that's what they want us to think happened. He who controls the past controls the present, and whoever controls the present controls the future. Thank you, George Orwell, 1984. So, yeah, I just, I don't know. And isn't it interesting that Russia had, they got involved in World War I, lost, and were already depleted, lost so many men, so that, knocked them down again. And right after World War I is when the Bolsheviks, later to be known as the Communist Party, took over. Weird. It's almost like maybe world power, well, I say powers, the people in power in the world conspired to weaken Russia and be the first place for communism. I mean, it's not that crazy to think of. So to all the men who sacrificed and died around the world from all different countries because they were sent there by, people in suits who will never have to go, and their children will never have to go. And if they kind of do, they're never in real danger. I think about those men, and I know that those men were valiant. And a lot of the time, like storming the beaches of Normandy, those men were brave and valiant. And in their hearts, they were stopping evil, regardless of what the powers that be were doing and why. And if it was really just all orchestrated by both sides, one power controlling both sides. I don't know, but I know that I value the men who sacrifice themselves for their families, loved ones, and respective countries. I just think you're sending strangers to go fight other strangers. And it's too many men have died and just been used as, sacrificial pawns. And so that's what I think on Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Glad to cheer everyone up and raise everyone's spirits. Like Debbie Downer over here. But anyway, I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. And I hope you're having a good weekend. I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.